Hello,
We're
everybody.
live.
This is the History Dose live stream survey reaction. You can see from the kind of disjointed title here, we will be looking at the survey for the year end 2023. The survey that we put out, just sort of getting your feedback. We had a little over 300 people respond to that. And so you can see what the entire community thinks of the videos we put out and what they want to see next, and see where you differ, or maybe you think the exact same thing as everybody else. And I also queued up a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. I always have people reach out asking how the art is made and uh, just the research process and stuff like that. And so I have a bunch of that stuff ready to go as well. I fielded some questions from YouTube and Instagram, but also as the show's going, you can submit your own questions. You can super chat, or you don't have to super chat. You can do a regular question. We'll probably be able to get to a bunch of them. So that's going to be sort of the rundown here. We probably sound way better than we did last time because neither of our mics worked, and we were using the crappy headphone mics or whatever when we had vlogging through history on. And so he completely showed us up. It was it was just him with an amazing and silky mic, and us with a crappy mic.
Yeah, do we sound okay? Everyone in the chat, do we sound luxurious? Hi, Rebecca.
Thank you guys for joining. All right, yeah, I just wanted to jump right into it here. So as I said, this is the 2023 survey. We fielded a bunch of people, and we got your feedback. We're going to start with the juicy one first, the best picture, basically, of 2023. So there's that thumbnail I made. It's almost perfect. Joe's hair cuts off there, but I'm just taking screen
I have
grabs.
more hair in that picture.
All right. So the first question on it was, which was your favorite video of 2023? Just to give you guys an idea and show you your choices here. This is in sort of reverse chronological order.
Oh, I think we lost Chris. Oops. Let's see if we can get him back.
Did you lose me? You can't hear me?
Is Chris cutting out for you guys? Everyone in the chat?
Am I okay? Can you hear me?
You just cut out for like probably 10 seconds.
Oh, crap. All right. How is it now?
Whatever you said 20 seconds ago. Okay.
Can you see
It's
what's on
probably just cutting out for...
You can see what I'm looking at, though? You got me? You can hear me? Okay, so these were our choices for it. We had Meyer Lansky was the first video of the year. We did Haida, what a pistol duel really looked like, the mighty Gupta Empire of India, the Boudica episode was the British Revolt. We had Sam Bellamy, Prince of Pirates, then the Battle of Ain Jalut, the Mongol versus Egyptian Mamluk War, the Osage, and then the last three of the year were the Jamaican Maroon Wars, Napoleon and the Battle of Trafalgar, and what a ninja attack really looked like. And just a heads up, Joe said he was cutting out a bit, so he'll probably be... Maybe I was never cutting out. Maybe it was just Joe the whole time. But he will probably rejoin in a second. So of these episodes, you can throw it in the chat. What do you think was the best of the year? And then I'll go reveal the winner. Joe, you're back.
You're sounding better now. It was probably on my end.
Yeah, I blame you. All right.
Okay.
So Yeah, we got a vote for Napoleon there. I don't know. Joe and I will reveal what our favorite one was afterwards. And it is interesting when I put this poll out. We had I put it out initially just to the Instagram and the Patreon followers, and I had actually way different answers. I think Osage won by a good amount
Hmm.
before, and then when I put it out to the general audience, we got some different answers. But it's not actually very correlated with total views. So here's what we had. We actually had Napoleon, the Battle of Trafalgar, won with about 20%. That's probably what I think we pulled off the best in terms of that.
Yeah.
Besides subject matter, there were things that I learned a little bit more about, and I felt were really cool to dive into, like the Gupta Empire, Haida. But I feel like we pulled off the Trafalgar one pretty well. I like that one. Battle of Angelut came in second with 18%. The Boudica one got 10%. Sam Bellamy, so Boudica and Sam Bellamy, those both were in sort of a view perspective, they kind of flopped. Like it took a while for them to even get to 100,000 or something. But from the fans that were filling out this, those were top episodes, and I think those were pretty good episodes too.
Hmm.
And then Haida got about 9% there, and this is out of I think 11 videos. So Irish
I
versus
agree with
Viking.
Trafalgar being at the top. I would have liked Bellamy to be up a little higher, but oh well.
Yeah, it was just a cool video, and so I have a number of behind the scenes stuff for that as well. But yeah, the reminder, we'll be answering questions throughout the show, so you guys are free to throw more questions in the chat. These were a couple of the ones when I put up the YouTube post earlier. I had a few comments. These were two questions that I felt were linked in a certain way. What's your current favorite period in history? And then a different question about what's the most recent time period or event you'd consider covering? Is there any considerations that you make if something is too soon or not? I would say I never really have a true favorite period in history. I Part of the reason why I could never, when I was considering grad school for history, I could never really pick one era or even one country, because I just felt like we have the same human story playing over and over again. With that said, I think for the purposes of this channel, I feel like medieval history, sort of maybe late and ancient, where we have a number of sources on it, as well as medieval period, there is just a really cool, I don't know, tradition of sources and poetic language, and this momentous aspect of I guess large battles and sort of this feeling of legend in there. But of course, you'll see the next few videos we have on deck are not in that period, and I also love covering other periods. Joe, what would you say?
Yeah, I probably will have to agree with you on that one. Medieval history, I really like, and I'm especially getting into it now because I'm reading Neil Price's book, Children of Ash and Elm, which kind of covers the origins of the Norse people, and it's very, very interesting. I was actually able to reach out to him on email, so hopefully in the future we can maybe have him on the live stream or podcast or something. But yeah, I like that, and I like the worldview of kind of Dark Ages, sort of, where everything seems to be kind of suffused with almost a sacramental, religious nature. And same thing you were saying about there's almost like a poetic nature when they're describing an event. Sometimes it has almost apocalyptic overtones or something. So yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think just on the point about Is there anything too recent? I wouldn't say that there's anything too recent, but more or less, I would say probably just before the turn of the century,
Hmm.
90s or earlier. I
We've
feel
gone
like
up to
when we
the
have
80s,
gone,
right? 80s is the
yeah, probably with Polyakov. I feel like when we have gone later, it's more like Meyer Lansky. You're following a story that ends up ending in the late 20th century.
yeah.
But
But will we begin something
I don't know.
in the late
Maybe it's
20th century?
because some of the issues are a little bit less touchy, not always,
Yeah.
but it's also I feel like it's a good idea to give a few decades to something for people to form theories and consider new evidence and things like that. So maybe I just want to stay away from current events and stuff. Maybe that's part of the subconscious
Kind
reasoning
of
here.
hot
But
button, you know.
this is a question from the Instagram. Rogues Odyssey says, "What is next in the careers of the Feely brothers?" Well, we were planning on continuing to do History Dose, but
Guess we're gonna move on. No.
I slipped this question in here because it kind of has something to do with the next survey result that I'm going to go over, which is a proposed additional content in a new format. So not stuff that would replace current History Dose videos; those would still be coming out at the same rate. But if we were going to add new content to this channel that is not basically exactly what we're doing right now, what would you like to see more of? So the proposed choices I gave the people who responded, the people who did the survey were more live streams with guests, which you'll see doesn't really do that well in this, but it might be because the other choices seem so good in comparison. Plus, we can always do live streams with guests. I have a cool announcement later this week about a guest that's joining. 2 was a podcast featuring interviews with historians and people who lived through historical events. So obviously, we could get a bunch of people who survived or went through important periods in history in the 20th century. And then farther back, we could meet with historians, and we'd be, open to fielding suggestions that you guys have, books that you read, and people maybe we can connect with and just do conversations. I think that might be on a different channel. We would do that. But number 3 would be art demonstrations and breakdowns. So Joe puts out the speed painting now, but if you'd be interested in sort of Joe taking, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes or an hour and going over the minutia of here's how I paint this, here is the history involved in here, here's my artistic decision here or there. So that's a possibility. And then the 4th thing is sort of like a big life goal. So when you're asking what's next in the career, this could be a cool avenue. This would be an occasional travel history show. Maybe we're taking trips across the country or across the world, with on-location footage and then my narration mixed in with some traditional art and editing. And the example I always give of that is, imagine if we went to, say, Mexico. It could be Teotihuacan or another old pyramid complex it's very weathered, and you get a sense of the landscape, but you kind of don't really know what the city or the urban life looked like at that time. And so we could have on-location footage. Maybe I'm talking over some of it, but then as this narrative is being weaved and we're learning more and more about it, we can also take some of those images or that footage and use that as the basis for Joe sort of detailing what that looked like, 1,000 years before or something.
We kind of did that with the Bellamy episode.
Oh,
We
right.
took one of your pictures from the location off the coast, and then I used that as kind of reference
Coast of
for
Maine.
how it looked a few hundred years ago. That was cool.
Yeah. And so we could increasingly do that. And I actually have a cool name for that I don't want to share because somebody else will steal it. But I'm kind of surprised nobody else has come up with it. So let's look at what people said. This tiny, super tiny sliver is more live streams with guests. I'm not going to take that to mean that you guys hate the live streams. I'm just going to take it to mean that you love all these other choices
Yeah, what the
because
heck?
we've never done them. So about 20% art demonstrations or breakdowns, 32% for the podcast, and then 46% for the travel history show. So that would be something really cool to add to it. I feel like all of these got a decent enough showing that this could be an additional, all three of these could be additional forms of content that you guys might be interested in. But let me know in the comments if you have a certain opinion on that. What if there's one of these that really stands out to you that you'd really like to see? Getting somebody talking about Tamerlane. Yeah, that's a couple. Tamerlane or Timmer. That is a future episode down the line as well. I wanted to sort of zoom through a couple of the last. It was a really quick survey because I know it has to be quick if I am going to hope that anybody fills it out. A few of the last questions I'm just going to zoom through here. So I asked, which best describes you? I watch every History Dose video as soon as I can. Every new History Dose video as soon as I can. You watch every new one eventually. You watch most videos eventually, or you watch only History Dose videos on topics that you find interesting. I feel like on the live stream we got people in this first camp. I also added other, so when we get the responses, some of them are so specific. If I'll be visiting family, I'll wait and watch. I used to watch every video, but recently I replay all your. So yeah, I don't know. What percentage has a History Dose system worked out for if they're visiting family? Yeah, it seemed like half of the people responded, watch every new History Dose video as soon as they can. Of course we don't get our entire subscriber base watching every new video. It's hard. You have like almost 700,000 subscribers, and it's tough to even I would say probably within a week we usually get about 100,000.
Yeah, we usually like 5% of our views comes from subscribers. But when something goes viral, it's mostly a very general, wider audience.
Yeah,
Who hasn't
and
heard
we
about us.
now have no idea how to make something viral. But we're pumping them out. You throw something in the algorithm, and something sticks every now and then. This red block was you watch every new history video eventually, so you get to it. Maybe you add it to your watch later. I always use the watch later YouTube function because I try not to spend too much time on YouTube. But if there's like a 15 or 20-minute thing, I'll add it and I'll get to it eventually. And then there's so the other people, there's people who watch most of it eventually, or the green, the 10% who only watch it if it's an interesting topic. And then I'm just sort of generalizing some of the responses for this. What draws you to History Dose? It seemed like this was almost universal in every single response. The storytelling, writing, the art, and then a number of people, especially when I had it to that smaller group of people, the Patreon and Instagram crowd, which you can follow us on Instagram. There's a link at the top of the description, so go do that. We have exclusive art and teasers and stuff like that, and pictures of my dog. But people also like the choice of topics, so I never want to be stuck in sort of just pulling the lever on just the history of one war or one era. And so, you'll see in the next couple of video topics we have there's a pretty good variety there. Oh yeah, this was one of the responses too. This was supposed to be short answer, and he lived up to it. Just as history, I guess, draws him to the channel. Okay, let's see. Here we go. We got a question coming in here.
Connection.
Yeah, thank you for the super chat. Love your channel. When looking at primary sources, and in your opinion, can you trust the English transcripts, or do you need to read it in original language? I would say that it really depends on where you're getting it from. So I'm always checking out the person who's translating it, if I'm relying on a translation. There are some cases, I was just talking with Jack Meister, Mongol History, about this. There are some cases where the translation you have is from like 1715 or 1800, and it's not ideal to just go on that. Not to say that they couldn't be right in their translation, but a lot of the times, if you're relying on something like that, it hasn't really been. You would like a more updated one that maybe has been criticized a bit and refined. And I think, yeah, so I'm always keeping an eye out for that, the English transcriptions. And yeah, you especially run into some of those issues with the when I was doing the ninja episode. There are scholars that don't speak Japanese, or scholars that there is one scholar that says that he doesn't speak Japanese, but he knows somebody who speaks Japanese who translates these primary sources for him. But the person he knows who speaks Japanese doesn't speak or doesn't understand really archaic or old Japanese from the 1500s, 1600s, 1400s. And so you'll see other scholars sort of take issue with a lot of his translations because there's, it might be similar to trying to parse out Old English. Even though I speak English, I'm going to miss a lot of the subtleties of that. That's a really good question. I was also talking with Jack Meister about the bias of sources, and people say, well, this primary source is biased. Doesn't mean you can't use it. Every primary source has some bias in it, but it's looking for, is there a uniformity of opinions in these primary sources, or is there, what can you what can you still take at their word, even if there's a bias there? So, for example, we had, when you see something that, I don't know, the Mongols are doing that is very cruel, and it comes from a Mongol source. Well, it could be real, could be that they're exaggerating their own effect, or it could have actually happened. But if you have a bunch of different accounts from different authors that are coming to the same conclusion, then you can more or less trust it. But I can talk about that for a long time. Great channel. Keep up the good work. Would be nice to see something from Polish history if possible. Yep. Joe and I are both a quarter Polish. Our grandmother's maiden name is Sokolowski. So we will definitely get to some Polish history at some point. We got to work through our different lineages. So last
Irish,
name is Feely.
English. We got Filipino, Polish, Scottish.
More than English, yeah. It would be Scottish, Polish,
Yeah.
Irish, and Filipino. So we go here. Let's move on. Okay, so yeah, I got some behind the scenes here. But first, just wanted to give a mid-show shout out to the Mongolia History Dose trip. We should have 11 spots left for that. I have a Discord chat, and I've been, just sort of getting excited with a bunch of the people who are on that chat. Everybody, it's a Discord for people who are on the trip, and we're just sharing some tips and things that we find interesting. Watch out in March, it should be. We'll be putting out a video that is a Mongol episode, but it's centered in Mongolia. So what do we know about sort of pre-Genghis Khan culture in the world that created him? And we're going to be, most of our Mongol episodes are very outward facing, where they conquered, and that's one of the things that's very interesting about the Mongols. But I would like to sort of just base this. We're staying in Mongolia. We're looking at their belief structure, how they lived, how they conducted war, and just getting this almost a bit more authentic feel that just sits with the Mongols a little bit more, because
a more intimate look with the Mongols.
Right. And I think when we're just covering wars, and this will have war in it, of course, but when you're just covering wars, it is harder to connect on a human level with them because we're kind of giving you the highlights of the worst thing that the Mongols have done. So we will. So keep an eye out on in March for that, and
Do
then
you
we
think it's
actually.
gonna be an episode that people can use as workout motivation? Like so many other fans have that said they listen to our Mongol destruction videos while they go to the gym.
Yeah, and I got a DM from somebody on Instagram who said that he's an MMA fighter, amateur MMA fighter, and he listens to our Mongol massacre videos before every fight. So there you go. Are
Yeah,
these videos for kids? I don't know.
that's why we do it.
Okay, so yeah, the if you want to see, just open that in a new tab or something. There's a link at the top of this description just to check out the itinerary for the Mongolia with History Dose trip. That's going to be in August of next year, and or of this year actually, this coming August. And yeah, just go check it out and maybe book a spot. And I'm also happy to answer any questions about that if it comes up. So that's the link at the top of this video's description. You can go check that out. This was the first one, so we haven't done the live stream, I think, since the Jamaica episode, or we did it right after the Jamaica episode, so we went over some of that. So this is
Mhm.
behind the scenes of a bunch of the art process. This was the Trafalgar one, and I had this idea for a really cool opening visual of Napoleon on this beachhead. This is the camp at, I think it's pronounced Boulogne. And, you know, that is just facing the English Channel. So Napoleon is assembling this massive army of around 100,000 people all along that coast, ready to invade. I don't even think I mentioned it, but there are parts in England at that time that you could look across the channel and see part of the invasion camps. So it was this very sense of dread and paranoia from the English populace or the British populace, just knowing that this invasion could come at any moment. And you know, the British were really guarded by the strength of that navy that just basically promised to wipe out Napoleon's invasion attempts if they ever tried to cross the channel. And so the Battle of Trafalgar is sort of the culmination of a bunch of maneuvers that Napoleon was trying to do to try to get part of the fleet out of the channel and break the blockade in other ports around the world, and then swing back into the channel with the Royal Navy distracted or broken up, and then send 100,000 people across and go try to knock Britain out of the war. So this was that previous summer. I think this is 1804. He's inspecting the troops there. And so I actually went through, there are a few paintings of that, and I went through and tried to map exactly what this would have looked like and sort of the layout of the coast. And so I found these old maps even. Right there, this little center is where that stage and ceremony was. And so I sort of imagine you could have conceivably a situation where you have Napoleon on one of these hills on this left side. And
So
so
you came
that
up with your interpretation, and he's riding a dog or a deer or something atop a cliff.
that's my art style. It's
Yeah,
minimalist. Yeah, so
modern.
a lot of times, yeah, I'll come up, I'll give Joe as much historical reference as I can, and then not always. You'll see in a couple of these situations, I will give a composition, what I think it looked like, or what I think is the most accurate, or what I think will is accurate and might be a cool angle to open on. And it ended up making, I think, one of Joe's best paintings ever.
Oh yeah, I really liked this painting. How it turned out. A lot of the art references you provided me too were kind of 18th, well, no, it wouldn't be 19th century paintings. So that color palette, I really like that romantic, luminous type color palette that I was able to use as reference.
Yeah, and then one of the things that we saw in there were several period paintings of Napoleon at this camp, and sort of it was normally very spread out, but this was it's like an inspection of the troops, but it's also Napoleon kind of giving his blessing and giving some ceremony to the event that we will one day invade England from these shores. And so the stage was modeled after that. But you see in these paintings as well a bunch of smoke coming out from the back.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even explain this in the video, but Joe did the same here. And it seems pretty clearly that this was a major event, and they're sort of doing like a cannon salute
Ceremonial.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
to these troops. So I was afraid initially at putting that in the beginning of the video, because then maybe the audience would assume that the army's getting attacked or something. But I feel like most people didn't notice, and it's just kind of a cool detail to throw in there.
Well, it's one of those details that if someone does comment and say, "What's going on here?" you can reply and say, "Well, we went to the careful, attention of figuring out what they may have been doing in this moment." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We got here. And I do have Matthew Harris says, please consider an art pack from your videos, maybe for patrons, because some are downright wall worthy. So Joe, you can look on Joe's art station. There are sort of lower quality. They're still decent quality, good for sort of a desktop. Most of the paintings are going to be published on Joe's art station. Just look up Joseph Feely Art Station. And then if you think it's wall worthy and you want to buy one, we do that through, is it Pixels, Joe?
I think, yeah, that's what the store is called. The link is on the channel page. So
Yeah, and so you can for any given video, you can click on the description in that video, and we'll have art prints there, and that will be ordered chronologically. So you could just scroll through and try to find where that video was.
yeah, you need to sort by recently added if you want like the most recent videos, because if you don't, by default, it's just a scatter of all the different paintings. So we're going to work out on some type of like website idea where you can just click the episode name and it will show you all the prints that come up.
I think we just made a sale.
Oh,
Enjoy my money,
thank you.
Joe. Get a nice steak on me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The reason
Let
why
us know
we
what you end up
don't-
buying.
well, the reason why we typically don't release full resolution files to the public is because I've dealt with in the past these files being leaked online and then people selling them in their own print shops and stuff. So
We've had other history channels.
we've had other
Take our
history
art.
channels. I recently had to confront someone who was taking my low resolution files and selling them in his print shop, along with so many other artists. There was an artist from who does artwork for D&D and Magic the Gathering. I reached out to him and said, "This guy's stealing your work too." So that's a big issue.
Comment from Tara. Love your channel, guys. My BF might be your biggest fan. The Trafalgar video gave me an anxiety attack. So good. Well, thank you. Maybe that was the goal.
We're glad to give you an anxiety attack.
Her boyfriend is our biggest fan, and we're just a constant source of anxiety for Tara. All right. Thank you for that comment. We got here very interesting, informative stuff. Would love to see some Welsh history. Yeah, we'll definitely cover. I don't know. We'll definitely be back up in that neck of the woods covering more stuff. Now that when we did some of our family tree, just finding out we have a lot more Scottish than we thought. Actually, from both sides of the family. If you go back far enough, we always assume that there was a tiny bit of English coming from our maternal grandmother who married a Filipino man. but a good amount of that, and her last name was Scottish. So this is Joe's painting of the HMS Victory. We're just going off of as many historical references as we can. There's Horatio Nelson under there. That was just a really beautiful painting.
Thank you.
And this was a really cool detail that I wanted to share with you guys. So a lot of times when we're making these things, I'm giving Joe as much historical reference as I can. This is when the HMS Victory is breaking the line in the Battle of Trafalgar, and they put a broadside, I believe it was double or triple shotted broadside, into the stern of the flagship for the French, commanded by Admiral Villeneuve. And as I was doing more of this, Joe had the painting pretty much done, and I learned that the mizzen mast, that mast all the way in the back, was shot out during that initial charge, or it was cracked or something like that. But then another source, as I was looking through primary sources, also mentioned that it wasn't until the French ship Achille at the end of the battle blew up that there was almost sort of, it wasn't caused by this, but a sort of a symbolic act where the mizzen mast of the HMS Victory finally came crashing down at the end of the battle, came crashing down onto the deck. So from that, I was able to piece together, okay, Joe, you need to change this. It was cracked in some way, but it wasn't all the way down. It didn't fall off. And so that tiny detail, it's only on for a few seconds during the video, but you'll see the mizzen mast is just sort of hanging by a thread there. It's been shot out during that initial charge. And then I also had to correct Joe because he made this, and then I found more information about the ships being a lot closer. So that triple shot went straight into the stern, killed I think over 100 men in one volley. I believe it's about 2.5 tons of hot iron just sort of raking through the back of this. A bunch of splinters and just a complete nightmare. Naval warfare was a nightmare. And so I had to have him edit it. And you can see he had to also change the lighting of it too to make it accurate. This is my screenshot, so it's a worse quality. But I mean, that was a fun episode to do. It felt like a risk in some ways because we hadn't ever really done naval warfare other than a little bit in Henry Every. But
plus we haven't done a video where we're just pretty much covering one battle for the entire length of the episode. But
I just felt like the characters were great in that episode. You're just dealing with these big personalities. So Tawan, will you guys ever be doing a Mongol origin video? Yeah, so when I was talking about the Mongolia-centered Mongol video, that's basically what it would be, is almost like pre-rise of Genghis Khan. All right. And then just going through a couple other videos, I wanted to pick out a few cool illustrations and some of the process behind that for a couple of these other last few videos. And if you haven't checked them out, be sure to check out, basically in this one we're talking about Trafalgar, the ninja video, and then the Irish versus Viking video. So the castle that you see at the beginning of the ninja one is Kaminogo Castle. And it's very hard to find references. I had to basically look up the actual location, which is sometimes visited by people today. It's sort of remembered as this old castle used to be there. And there is a model of what it used to look like. And so you can see two sort of simple fences here. It's not a great big stone castle or anything like that. And this embankment, and it's up on a hill. Most of these castles would already be built on a natural hill like that. And also finding it on Google Earth or Google Maps and trying to get whatever angles I can to say this is probably what it would have looked like. And then I, of course, make a really beautiful composition for Joe, and I throw in the details. That's supposed to be a fence along the
Oh
bottom
yeah,
here, and there's a fence up there, and there's sentry
torches,
towers.
distance.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
beautiful.
this is this is what it ends up look like in the video. So so much research goes into each one of these paintings that it's really cool for me to assemble a bunch of information and a composition and stuff like that, and then see what Joe makes out of it. So that's also when people are looking up, more and more history channels are turning to AI. This, I mean, this is just
It's
no
all
one
research.
knows. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you could not ask Google what Kaminogo Castle looks like and what in that specific year the contested identity of ninjas, what they would have worn in this scenario, and what kind of fortification we had. So it does. I think it usually does a very big disservice to history to use AI art, because it's taking whatever's the most popular depiction and blending it into something ridiculous most of the time.
Well, I've compared it in the past. It's almost like a Marvelization, kind of like the Marvel movies. What they do to um, kind of the Norse aesthetic with Asgard and Thor and everything. A lot of AI videos do that too. Like you'll see Native American ones. You were talking to me, Chris, the other day about kind of ambient Native American flute music, and they were using AI art, and it just looks very strange. It's like, yeah, the girl in this looks kind of Native American, but she has eyeliner and some like Egyptian jewelry on too, but she also has a
And it's somebody
headdress.
prompting for beautiful girl, and then they put in a Czechoslovakian Instagram model or something, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like you're not getting a sense for what these people look like and the humanity and history. And if it's AI art, you don't have a human behind the art to begin with. So there's something kind of otherworldly and weird about that to begin with. This was another one. This is a zoomed in version of maybe my favorite painting from the Ninja episode. And we did a bunch of research into the most common symbols you would see on the banners for here. So the Oda Nobunaga clan, what did he more commonly have? He probably, so that's the Oda clan symbol, that flowery looking thing right here. But in a bunch of manuscripts, and when he's actually on campaign, a lot of times you see this coin coin banner. So you see that the white ones there. It's a detail I'm sure nobody really noticed, but I also gave Joe the idea to include this samurai. I love samurai armor, and when you're playing Ghost of Tsushima or something, and they have here's a here's a bonus thing, and you're like, nobody ever actually wore this, right? Well, a lot of these people were dressing themselves for battle. It's not a standard issue or a standardized this is what a samurai looks like. And so you had an incentive to sort of look very fearsome and elaborate if you could. And the design for that one, not only do we have many surviving examples of different, very elaborate and beautiful and fearsome looking samurai armor, but we have old manuscripts like this, and even just zooming in, you can see you kind of have your standard what a troop looks like, the Ashigaru, these standard recruits look like, but you can zoom in, and I saw this guy, and I was like, Joe, we got to do something like that in our video.
Hmm.
So that was one of the samurai out front, and it's just awesome to think anybody was going into battle looking like that.
Also, if you go back to the painting, Chris, another cool detail is really suggested in the background, but you'll see on one of the pole arms in the background between the two yellow banners there, there's a like a helmet. Uh, and that was also something that we picked up on in the manuscripts. The tapestries is some of them were parading around with helmets or maybe kind of effigies of helmets on poles. So just like a small detail that no one would probably really catch unless they were really paying attention and they knew enough about this subject. But that's kind of the obsessive details that we can get really into with the art.
Yeah, because we're always just obsessed with seeing what it looks like from our just for our own sake, and so we want to give you the most accurate representation that we could possibly make in all of these cases.
Yeah.
So now on to the Ireland video. I hope you guys have all checked that one out. Started off really well. The views are slowing down a bit right now, but we've got some really good feedback for that one. It was cool to just sort of sit with that Irish culture at a
Oh, yeah.
time when this was sort of classic warrior culture.
And it was cool seeing a lot of Irish people in our comments too who just really appreciate the video.
Yeah. So we know a lot about early medieval Irish settlements. What you can find, there are thousands and thousands. I think it's some crazy number, like 40,000 identified or supposed ring forts. There's different names for them. You'll see the name Cashel. Sometimes it'll just be called medieval enclosure. But basically, the idea is that you have some sort of embankment around. Getting some weird noise in here, Joe.
It might be a plane.
Okay. But you have a raised platform and an embankment around it. Sometimes you have two bumps. But we can see all this through archaeology. So still, if you go to these farmlands today, you'll see these old enclosures, and then you have scholars recreating what it probably looked like. A lot of times you might just have a simple fence around it, and you have some houses and maybe just some farm related buildings in that enclosure, and then a little path that goes over it. And we still have in Ireland today, there's still many stone ring forts, ruins, and or various states of decay or
Yeah.
structural integrity that
It's
are
kind
still
of interesting.
standing.
Some
Really
of these
beautiful.
some of these ruins are very, very old, and they've kind of fallen into folklore. And some people have said that those were left over by fairies. So I think another term for them are fairy forts. And there's a bit of a stigma around like don't go wander in the fairy forts at night or something. So pretty interesting.
The as I was doing the research for this, there's a scholar, I believe, by the name of Aidan O'Sullivan, who has done a lot of work on this. And in a lecture, he was talking about how the ring forts, this was the way that everybody lived in Ireland in the early medieval period. And so, prior to about 1000 AD, you kind of just see everybody always living in this, whether you're rich or poor, you live in a ring fort. Maybe you could assume that somebody who's wealthier is living in a stone one versus a simple farm one. But it is interesting because you don't really see these big towns or villages with 50 huts or something. You're always seeing these cases of a ring fort with 5 huts. It's mostly a family unit, and they work the surrounding farmland or pasture land. And so that is what ends up informing the paintings that you see in the video.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm passing references off to Joe about what do we know that their houses look like at this time. Around this time, we're seeing a transition in Irish archaeology from a classic, more rounded hut to a lot more rectangular. And so at the time of the video, you would see the archaeology shows that you would see both of these kinds inside the same enclosure. And so you see that in this video. I don't even think I really went into that detail for you, Joe. I end up giving you I'm like, yeah, show this.
And there's something interesting about the pigs there, right?
Oh, right. The pigs, too. Most medieval pigs were not pink like we see them. They looked a lot more like wild boars or wild hogs. And
Narrow
so
face. Yeah.
the pigs that you see here tend to have a lot more coloration in their skin. So there might be some pink on them, but they have partly black or brown or gray. And they're a lot more narrow. So they're not fattened up and pink hogs like we have on farms today. They would just, they're a lot more wild looking and probably closer to what a more undomesticated pig would look like. But yeah, so you can see in this video, you have a more simple enclosure here in the foreground, and then in the background, we're seeing some of these stone enclosures, including built on hills. You find a couple examples of those stone enclosures built on hills, just presumably for fortification reasons. A couple of notes about the clothing that you see in the video as well. So one of the things that you see a lot in Irish fashion in this period is something called, I believe it's pronounced a lena. And that is sort of a longer tunic held together with a belt. A lot of them were saffron colored, but we also see a variety of colors, just plain white or just linen fabric color, undyed. And as well as some designs. Some people would have leggings as well, not Lululemon, but some form of legs that you kind of have underneath. And later on, actually, in the Gala Glass video, you'll see people wearing these longer Lena tunics, but they had much longer sleeves. They were very flowy at the time. And so
Yeah.
for the purposes of our videos, though, we are going off of I believe it's 8th century or 9th century book called the Book of Kells, which is a key source for Irish fashion of the era. A lot of it is religious in origin, but people tend to paint their religious icons with the fashion clothes that they know. So their sleeves were a lot more tapered there then. And then, there's people try to sort of dissect what are people wearing here and what could this say about what their clothes were at the time. And so there is a possible hooded Lena shown in one of them. And so you'll see this is what we used for the sort of a typical man and woman.
And I think originally when I started painting the Lena in a couple different paintings, I was going with the much more flowy rendition of it, which wouldn't have been around until, a few centuries later. But I think you came in and you did a little more research and you're like, okay, no, correction. Those sleeves need to come in a bit more. They can't be like a bathrobe, essentially.
Yeah. And then, so with the possible inclusion of a hooded Lena, you could maybe say that it's feasible that at night or under the right weather conditions, you might favor that. And so that informed the really badass picture of Brian Boru doing these nighttime raids on the Vikings. And I was like, okay, so now we have some historical reasoning, some historical probability that during these raids you could be wearing a hood and you could just basically look like Aragorn as you're taking on the Vikings.
That I deliberately had that image in mind of Aragorn in the corner of the tavern smoking his pipe with embers coming up. I was like, how can I make that feeling but Brian Boru killing the Vikings? So the picture itself kind of has a similar feeling to that scene. But yeah, that was cool that you found that hooded tunic because it just allowed us to have a really badass painting.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all of the art background stuff that I have. I'm happy to scroll through if you guys want to throw any final questions at us, but this was fun to do. Always love connecting, and we build up a lot of this art, and so I was just thinking we should dive into some of it and really show you what's going on in some of these, because some of those are so specific that there's no way I'm going to mention in a video about, you know, the changes in Irish architecture 100 years before this video, or really go deep into the Lena or something. We have a question from Iman Explains. Would you ever consider making a video about Ethiopia and the Battle of Adawa? Definitely, we got to find some more. I do have some in the prospective topics list. I don't remember if it was Ethiopia. It was something. I have a few East African topics. And so, yeah, if you guys have more suggestions, honestly, a number of the topics that were in the prospective topics list were made by commenters. We never would have done. There was somebody who on our Plains American Indians video commented we should do King Kamehameha. And then like a year later we did that. And we have probably gotten like 10 or 15 comments over the years saying that we should do Brian Boru. Lo and behold, we just did it. So we pay attention to the comments, and yeah, if you have a really good idea, throw them our way. Let me write that down, Battle of Adawa, and we can look into it. No promises, but I'm happy to sort of look at any of these things. And
got to add it to the list. All right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Underground Man. I think he's commented this a couple times. Would we ever consider doing Unit 731?
If you want me to be depressed
for
3 months.
Depressed and possibly demonetized and age restricted and buried in YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the complicated thing with YouTube.
I would do it. I think we cover a bunch of topics that actually I know some other channels would be afraid to mention some of these details. I think we're pretty tame with it. Our Joe Gallo one still is actually demonetized and age restricted, so that's annoying, but I don't want to change the way that we present history just out of the fear of that. I think we're mostly going to be fine. But yeah, I mean, the way to do that is just to mention really nasty details and not show so much of it or hint at it. So like the Brodeer scene in the last video where he gets disemboweled around a tree. Joe was like, should I have some silhouette and you can see his entrails? I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Just show me the tree and it'll be menacing enough.
Oh, we opted for sound effects, so there's a little gory rip flesh sound effect when you see the tree.
Yeah, and I think we did a similar thing with the Battle of Trafalgar. So you're seeing a really splintered sort of suggestions of corpses on a deck, but we're not actually going to show you brains splattered against a mast.
Unit 731 would have some very intimate descriptions, though. I mean, I don't know how much we could, paint over a lot of the violence with that.
The big one, asking about people's hair in the past. Tons of people are still shaving and finding ways to cut their hair. You need to check out an older History Dose video on the history of mustaches. People were always finding ways to shave. Sometimes shaving meant you were a barbarian, or sometimes it meant you were weak, or sometimes the opposite. So
we were actually trying to do a little bit of barbershop research on the Irish people too, because I was asking Chris, I'm like, how did they cut their hair? Like, what would they have cut their hair like? And I don't think there was any uniform way, but a lot of it was pretty practical. Like in those old manuscripts, like it's just bangs are cut across. You don't want it in your eyes. It's kept long here. So you'll notice a couple of that in the video itself. I think even Brian Boru, I gave like kind of a practical, straight cut bangs haircut.
There are some hairstyles that emerge a little bit later. So in the Gallaglass era, there is a hairstyle that's sort of like a longer bangs and then cut short in the back. And
sounds very Viking-y.
I'm blanking on the name of that. Maybe somebody in the comments knows. But that specific hairstyle was even outlawed by the British, or the English, because it became associated with strong Irish culture. And so you didn't want your people sort of displaying their independence by doing that. Cannonball through the pirate guts was sick as F.
Oh yeah, on our every one, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for submitting questions and hanging out. We just hit the hour mark. We do have some really great videos on deck. We have a Native American one this month. And then we have, I talked about the Mongol one. And then we have, I'm not going to say exactly what it is. I know the general era it is, but it'll be a lot more modern history. And that will be in April. So thank you guys for tuning in. And
Thank you.
be sure to check out any of those videos if you haven't seen them. Go leave a comment on them, something for the algorithm. And if you are at all curious about taking an adventure this year, go check out the itinerary for the Mongolia episode, or not Mongolia episode, the Mongolia trip. That is going to be a really cool way, especially when I'll be promoting that a little bit more after our Mongol episode, and we'll get sort of a greater sense of the history of that region. And then when we actually go there and we're sleeping in yurts and there's a camel ride along the Gobi Desert, you'll kind of be sitting with this this land that is still has a lot of connections to the past. I believe it's still about 50% of Mongolians live in a sort of nomadic lifestyle still, and they live far outside the city. So that'll be really cool. Check out that trip if you want to join me and Joe on that trip in August. And then I also have a link to the Instagram. Like I said, we have lots of nice updates there, and it's another way to almost have a more personal connection to us. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.
Thank you. See you
See
guys.
ya. Bye.